Welcome back to the 2 of 3 How to Find Stoic Happiness. Close your eyes again and take a deep breath. You know, the words a person tells themselves at the end of the day become the blueprint for how they will perceive the next one. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about the importance of reminding oneself of Stoic principles daily. He repeated truths to himself not because he had forgotten them, but because he understood that wisdom must be constantly reinforced. Even the strongest mind is susceptible to drifting if not anchored in repetition. This is why pre-sleep affirmations are not merely motivational statements, they are mental conditioning. The repetition of certain phrases trains the mind to default to those beliefs under pressure. Over time, what once required effort becomes natural. What once felt like a deliberate choice becomes instinct. When affirmations are used before sleep, they work directly with the subconscious. The brain does not simply shut off during rest. It processes, sorts, and strengthens patterns of thought. This is why dreams often reflect unresolved emotions or persistent fears. The subconscious holds on to what is repeated most often. If a person consistently tells themselves that they have control over their thoughts, that external events do not dictate their emotions, that adversity is a training ground rather than a setback, then these ideas become automatic responses. A stressful event that once triggered frustration begins to trigger calm instead. A disappointment that once led to self-pity begins to lead to renewed determination. The mind, through repetition, learns how to respond in ways that serve rather than hinder. Affirmations work because the brain does not distinguish between real and imagined experiences. When a person visualizes themselves acting with strength, their brain activates as if they are physically experiencing that moment. This is why elite athletes use mental rehearsal to improve their performance, because the brain strengthens neural pathways through repetition, whether an action is physically performed or simply thought about. Stoic pre-sleep affirmations follow the same principle. By consistently reinforcing the belief that emotions are within control, that setbacks are opportunities, that nothing external has power over inner peace, the brain wires itself to react accordingly in real-life situations. The language used in these affirmations matters. The subconscious mind absorbs statements as truths, so they must be framed in a way that reinforces desired beliefs. Saying, "I will try to remain calm," leaves room for doubt, whereas saying, "I am in control of my emotions," reinforces certainty. Saying, "I hope to accept what happens," lacks conviction, while saying, "I embrace all that comes my way," aligns directly with amor fati. The mind strengthens what is presented to it as absolute. This is why Stoics did not speak in uncertain terms about their principles. They did not say they would attempt to be resilient. They said they were resilient. They did not hope to control their thoughts. They stated with certainty that they did. The effectiveness of affirmations also depends on repetition. A single instance of telling oneself a truth does little to change ingrained mental habits. But when the same truth is repeated night after night, the subconscious begins to absorb it as reality. This is why pre-sleep affirmations should not be random or inconsistent. They should follow a structure, reinforcing core Stoic beliefs in a way that builds mental resilience over time. The goal is not to feel different immediately, but to shape the subconscious so that over weeks, months, and years, the default reaction to life's challenges becomes stronger, calmer, and more aligned with reason. The connection between affirmations and neuroplasticity is well documented in neuroscience. The brain operates on a use it or lose it principle. Neural pathways that are repeatedly activated become stronger, while those that are ignored weaken over time. This is why behaviors that are repeated consistently become habits, whether good or bad. If a person repeatedly allows their emotions to dictate their reactions, their brain strengthens that response until it becomes automatic. But if they repeatedly affirm that they are in control, their brain begins to restructure itself around that belief. What once felt unnatural becomes second nature. Stoic pre-sleep affirmations are a direct way to take control of this process. By using the moments before sleep to reinforce principles of acceptance, resilience, and control, the mind begins to adopt these qualities as its default mode. The goal is not to force oneself to be calm and rational. It is to train the mind so that calm and rational thinking happen effortlessly. This is the difference between forcing discipline and embodying it. One is effort, the other is nature. Affirmations bridge the gap between knowing what is wise and actually living it without hesitation. A common mistake people make with affirmations is expecting immediate results. The mind does not change overnight. Just as physical strength is built through repeated training, mental strength is built through repeated reinforcement. A person doesn't become resilient by saying it once. They become resilient by saying it every night until their subconscious holds onto it so firmly that it becomes part of who they are. The Stoics understood this long before neuroscience confirmed it. They did not rely on fleeting motivation. They trained their minds with unwavering discipline, knowing that the more a belief was repeated, the stronger it became. The impact of these affirmations extends beyond sleep. A person who conditions their mind at night wakes up with those thoughts already in place. Their first response to stress is not panic, but control. Their reaction to hardship is not frustration, but acceptance. Their default state is not one of resistance, but of clarity. This is the power of repetition. It is not about forcing the mind to be a certain way. It is about shaping it over time so that wisdom is no longer something to reach for. It is simply how the mind functions. Neuroplasticity ensures that what is practiced becomes permanent. This is why negative thought patterns are so difficult to break. People who constantly tell themselves they are not good enough, that life is unfair, that nothing works in their favor, reinforce those beliefs until they feel inescapable. But the same process applies to positive conditioning. A person who tells themselves every night that they are capable, that they are in control, that external events hold no power over them, strengthens those truths until they become undeniable. The brain does not judge the thoughts it strengthens. It simply strengthens whatever is repeated most. This is why Stoics place such importance on daily reflection and repetition of key principles. They knew that wisdom was not something one learned once and retained forever. It had to be reinforced constantly, ingrained into the very structure of the mind. Pre-sleep affirmations were not about changing emotions in the moment. They were about conditioning the mind so that over time, emotions aligned with reason without struggle. They ensured that even in moments of challenge, even in times of uncertainty, the mind did not waver. It did not revert to fear or doubt. It remained steady because it had been trained to be so. The final thoughts before sleep shape the subconscious. The subconscious shapes the mind shapes reality. This is why what is said before rest matters. It is not just talk, it is programming. It is the construction of resilience. It is the foundation for an unshakable life. Those who master their pre-sleep thoughts master their waking world. Those who train their minds at night wake up in control. Those who repeat wisdom until it is instinct never have to force themselves to be strong. They simply are. The mind is shaped by what it repeatedly hears, sees, and believes. What is fed into the subconscious before sleep dictates how the brain will process reality upon waking. Pre-sleep affirmations are not just words. They are tools for rewiring thought patterns, training the mind to default to clarity, resilience, and stability. But for many, the struggle begins before affirmations can even take effect. The greatest obstacle to mental conditioning during sleep is not just negative thought patterns, it is the inability to sleep at all. Insomnia disrupts the very foundation upon which mental resilience is built. When sleep is elusive, the mind is left restless, unsettled. constantly reaching for control over something that cannot be forced. The more a person chases sleep, the more it evades them. The fear of not sleeping creates more resistance, tightening the grip of anxiety, making rest even more difficult to achieve. Most people treat insomnia as an enemy, something to fight against, something that must be fixed immediately. But this very resistance is what keeps the mind trapped in cycles of wakefulness. The Stoics approach problems differently. They did not fight against reality. They adjusted to it. They did not allow their peace to be dictated by external conditions. If sleep came, they accepted it. If it did not, they remained unshaken. The key was always the same: indifference. Indifference to sleep loss does not mean dismissing its importance. It means refusing to let it become a source of suffering. It means understanding that the true cause of distress is not the lack of sleep itself, but the mind's reaction to it. The frustration, the anxiety, the endless questioning of why sleep will not come. These are the real causes of exhaustion. The Stoic approach is to remove the unnecessary suffering layered on top of the physical pain. Sleep is a function of the body, but distress over sleep is a function of the mind. The goal is not to force sleep, but to eliminate the mental resistance surrounding it. A person lying awake at night often tells themselves a story: how they will suffer the next day, how their mind will not function, how everything will fall apart if rest is not achieved. But this is an illusion. Sleep deprivation does not have the catastrophic consequences that anxiety makes it seem. The body is resilient. The mind is adaptable. A single restless night, or even many, does not define a person's strength or ability to function. The belief that sleep must be perfect every night is a modern construct, one that creates unnecessary pressure. The Stoics understood that control over external circumstances is an illusion. They trained themselves to accept what came and to function regardless of conditions. Marcus Aurelius, ruling an empire, had nights where sleep did not come, but he did not allow this to disrupt his composure. He wrote that people often suffer more in their imagination than in reality. Lying awake, dwelling on the idea of lost rest, only deepens distress. The body knows how to recover. Even in moments of exhaustion, strength can still be found. Seneca too experienced sleepless nights. Yet he did not see them as problems. He used the time for thought, for reflection, for calm acceptance. He did not add suffering where there was none. One of the greatest errors people make when struggling with sleep is thinking that rest must come immediately. They panic when it does not, believing that every minute awake is a failure. But the mind cannot be forced into relaxation. The more pressure is placed upon it, the more alert it becomes. Stoicism teaches detachment from outcomes. Sleep is no different. The more a person lets go of the need to sleep, the more likely rest will come. The paradox of control applies here. True control is found in surrender. Anxiety about sleep is often worse than the lack of sleep itself. The belief that a night without rest will ruin the following day creates unnecessary distress. The body is not as fragile as modern thinking suggests. It can withstand discomfort. It can function under less than ideal conditions. Sleep is valuable, but its absence is not a catastrophe. The Stoics prepared themselves for hardship, knowing that resilience is built not in perfect conditions, but in adapting to whatever arises. Sleep loss is no different. Accepting wakefulness as neither good nor bad removes its power to disturb. People often measure their nights in numbers. How many hours of sleep were gained? How many were lost? This focus on measurement fuels anxiety, reinforcing the idea that sleep must meet an exact standard to be effective. But the body does not function in rigid perfection. Some nights are restful, others are not. A fixation on numbers only increases frustration. The Stoics did not count hours. They focused on what was within control. If sleep came, they embraced it. If it did not, they used the time productively or rested without resentment. The way a person speaks to themselves about sleep shapes their experience of it. Those who say, "I will not be able to function without sleep," program their minds to struggle the next day. Those who say, "My body will adjust and I will endure," build resilience. The subconscious listens. It takes in whatever is repeated most often. If thoughts of dread surround sleep loss, exhaustion is deepened. If thoughts of capability are reinforced, the mind adapts. This is the core of Stoic pre-sleep conditioning, training the mind to respond with reason rather than panic. The world today treats sleep as another achievement, something to be perfected, tracked, and optimized. But sleep is not a competition. It is a natural process, one that cannot be forced into structure beyond what the body needs. The more it is turned into something to win at, the more elusive it becomes. The Stoics saw no benefit in worrying about things outside of their influence. They accepted conditions as they were, making the best use of what was available. If sleep came, they welcomed it. If it did not, they did not let it define them. A sleepless night does not ruin a person. The idea that it does is a distortion created by modern expectations. The Stoics endured battles, shipwrecks, exile, and extreme hardship. They functioned under conditions far worse than temporary sleep loss. They did not let discomfort dictate their mindset. They adapted. The belief that sleep must be perfect, that rest must be uninterrupted, is a self-imposed limitation. The body knows how to adjust. The mind must learn to trust it. A person who stops fearing insomnia stops suffering from it. Wakefulness is not the enemy. The resistance to wakefulness is. The night can be used for thought, for meditation, for acceptance. The body will rest when it is ready. Until then, there is no reason to let frustration take hold. The moment sleep is no longer treated as something to win or lose, it becomes effortless. The moment the mind lets go, the body follows. The power of indifference is often misunderstood. It is not about not caring. It is about not being controlled. A Stoic does not ignore sleep, but they do not obsess over it either. They take what comes, knowing that no single night determines their strength. They trust in their own resilience. They understand that the body is designed to endure. The belief that sleep must always be perfect is the true source of distress. The removal of that belief is the cure. The next time sleep is difficult, there is a choice: panic or acceptance, resistance or ease. The Stoic does not fight what is happening. They do not feed the cycle of frustration. They release the illusion of control, and in doing so, they find freedom. Sleep, like all things, will come when it is needed. Until then, the mind remains steady, untangled, at peace. Indifference to sleep loss is not about ignoring the body's needs. It is about refusing to be ruled by them. And that refusal is what makes the difference between suffering and serenity. Letting go of the need to control sleep creates freedom. Anxiety over restlessness fuels the very problem it seeks to solve. A mind that accepts wakefulness without resistance naturally finds ease. A mind that clings to frustration remains trapped. The Stoics knew that peace does not come from the external world conforming to expectation. It comes from the mind mastering its own reactions. This is why Marcus Aurelius, even in the most demanding years of his life, refused to let sleeplessness dictate his inner state. He understood that the battle was never with sleep itself, but with the thoughts that surrounded it. His writings and meditations reveal how he approached restlessness not as an enemy, but as a test of discipline, a moment to practice control over the only thing that ever truly mattered, his own mind. The greatest obstacle to sleep is not exhaustion, but mental resistance. A racing mind is not a random occurrence. It is the result of deeply ingrained habits, patterns of thought that have not been examined, impulses that have never been tamed. Marcus Aurelius did not allow his mind to run unchecked. He treated each thought as something to be observed, studied, and when necessary, discarded. He understood that the mind's natural state is movement, but movement does not need to be chaos. When restlessness crept in, he reminded himself of a simple truth. It is not the events that disturb the mind, but the judgments placed upon them. This applied not only to the struggles of daily life, but to the experience of sleeplessness itself. The thought, "I cannot sleep," is not inherently distressing. The belief that it will ruin the next day, that it signals something wrong, that it must be fought, these are the causes of suffering. He trained himself to respond to restlessness with indifference. Sleep was neither something to be forced nor something to be feared. He did not let the idea of tiredness hold power over him. He understood that the body would take what it needed in its own time. To worry over it was wasted effort. If the mind was active, he did not battle it, he directed it. He used wakefulness as an opportunity for reflection rather than frustration. He reviewed his actions, measured his reactions, and refined his understanding of his own nature. He did not let the night be ruled by resistance. He let it be what it was. His greatest weapon against anxiety was perspective. He reminded himself again and again that most things do not matter as much as they seem to in the moment. The mind, when left unchecked, magnifies small concerns into great burdens. A minor inconvenience becomes unbearable. A passing thought turns into a reason for panic. Marcus Aurelius knew that most disturbances lose their weight when seen from a broader view. He often reminded himself that he was a small part of a vast, unfolding universe, where everything rises and falls, where nothing lasts forever, and where most troubles are insignificant in the face of time. This mindset reduced fear. It dissolved worry. It put everything back into its proper place. He knew that restlessness was not just about sleep, it was about attachment. Attachment to things outside of his control, attachment to his own expectations, attachment to the idea that his circumstances should be different than they were. The key to peace was detachment. Not detachment in the sense of disinterest, but detachment from false beliefs, from unnecessary suffering, from emotional reactions that served no purpose. He trained himself to let go. If the body resisted sleep, he did not argue with it. He met it with acceptance. He let his mind settle into the understanding that this, too, was part of life. Most people who struggle with restlessness fall into the trap of believing that they must quiet the mind before they can sleep. They attempt to suppress thoughts, to force calmness. But suppression does not create peace. It creates inner conflict. The more a thought is pushed away, the stronger it returns. Marcus Aurelius took a different approach. He did not silence his mind. He observed it. He let thoughts pass without attachment. He did not hold on to them. He did not identify with them. He let them come and he let them go. In this way, the mind naturally slowed. Sleep became possible because it was no longer being chased. He also reminded himself that sleeplessness was not suffering unless the mind made it so. It was a state of being, nothing more. He had endured far worse than a restless night. He had faced battles, plagues, the weight of an empire on his shoulders. To be tired was insignificant compared to the trials he had already overcome. If he could function under the strain of war, of political upheaval, of personal loss, then surely he could function under the mild discomfort of fatigue. Strength was not built in comfort, it was built in hardship. He saw sleeplessness as yet another opportunity to train himself in resilience. He often reflected on memento mori, the reminder that life is fleeting, that death comes for all, that time is limited. This was not a morbid thought for him. It was a tool to remove unnecessary worry. If life itself was short, why waste any moment of it in frustration? If the body resisted sleep, then he would use the time he was given. He would not let the mind fall into despair over something so minor in the grand scheme of existence. Marcus Aurelius did not expect his mind to obey him instantly. He knew that discipline was built through practice. He understood that control over thoughts was not something that happened overnight. It was something that had to be reinforced night after night until it became second nature. This is why he wrote his meditations. They were not written for anyone else. They were written as reminders to himself. His own mind needed guidance. His own thoughts needed structure. He repeated truths to himself because repetition is the foundation of mastery. His approach to anxiety was the same. He did not let his mind dictate his emotions without challenge. If a thought brought distress, he questioned it. Was this truly something worth worrying over? Would this matter in a month, a year, 10 years? Most of the time, the answer was no. And if it did not matter, then why let it disturb the present moment? He learned to cut through illusion, to strip away the false importance that the mind often places on trivial concerns. He did not let himself be ruled by what was fleeting. He trained himself to remain steady, to see reality clearly. When sleep came, it came. When it did not, he remained composed. He did not tie his well-being to a single night of rest. He did not let the body's fluctuations dictate the strength of his mind. He took what was given and made use of it. He reminded himself that he had endured before, and he would endure again. This is the core of Stoic resilience, not the elimination of discomfort, but the ability to remain unshaken by it. His writings are filled with reminders that nothing external holds power over the mind unless it is allowed to. The world may bring difficulty, the body may experience discomfort, but none of these things have the ability to disturb unless permission is given. This is why he remained at peace. He did not give his circumstances more power than they deserved. He remained in control because he understood where true control existed, not in sleep, not in the body's needs, but in his own perception of them. The modern world treats sleeplessness as something to be feared, something to be fixed. But Marcus Aurelius would have viewed this as a false belief. There is no suffering in wakefulness unless the mind creates it. Restlessness is not a curse. It is a chance to practice acceptance. Anxiety is not inevitable. It is a response that can be changed. The moment a person stops fighting against sleeplessness, the moment they stop fearing tiredness, is the moment they are free. The next time rest does not come easily, there is a choice to resist or to accept, to panic or to remain calm, to feed anxiety or to let it pass. The Stoic does not chase what cannot be forced. They do not fight what is outside their control. They train their mind to remain steady in all circumstances. And through this training, they achieve what most fail to understand, that peace is not found in sleep itself, but in the mind that no longer fears its absence. The greatest burden is not what happens during the day, but what the mind refuses to release at night. Anxiety, frustration, regret. These are weights carried not because they must be, but because they are not put down. Marcus Aurelius understood that the ability to sleep peacefully had little to do with external circumstances and everything to do with detachment. The ability to let go is not weakness, it is power. It is the mastery of knowing what is worth holding on to and what must be discarded. It is the discipline of refusing to allow unnecessary thoughts to poison the present moment. The Stoics called this apatheia, a state of inner equilibrium where the mind is undisturbed by external chaos. The world may be turbulent, responsibilities may be demanding, the past may be full of mistakes, but none of these things have control unless the mind allows them to. Detachment does not mean indifference. It does not mean ignoring problems or pretending that life is without difficulty. It means refusing to give power to what cannot be changed. It means seeing reality clearly and choosing not to be emotionally consumed by it. The mind, when left unchecked, clings to stress, repeating conversations, analyzing mistakes, anticipating problems that have not yet arrived. This is why so many struggle to find rest. The day is over, but the mind is still living in it. The Stoics did not allow this. They understood that each day is complete in itself. There's nothing to be gained by carrying today's worries into tomorrow. The discipline of detachment is the discipline of knowing when to release what no longer serves a purpose. Most people suffer not because of what happened, but because they refuse to let it go. They replay interactions, regret their words, wish events had unfolded differently. They hold on to anger as if it changes what has already passed. But the past is untouchable. It cannot be rewritten. Holding on to it only ensures that suffering continues long after the moment has ended. The Stoics mastered the art of letting go because they understood that attachment to what is already gone is nothing but self-inflicted pain. Before sleep, they reviewed the day, acknowledged its events, extracted the lessons, and then released them. They did not dwell. They did not carry unnecessary thoughts. They ensured that when they lay down, their minds were as light as possible. Letting go requires clarity. It requires the ability to distinguish between what is within control and what is not. A mind that does not make this distinction is a mind that suffers unnecessarily. If a mistake was made, is there an opportunity to correct it? If yes, then take action. If not, then it is already outside of control. If someone acted unfairly, can their actions be changed? If no, then it is wasted energy to relive the event. If stress lingers about the future, will worrying about it now improve the outcome? If not, then the only rational response is to let it go. The mind creates its own suffering by holding on to things that serve no purpose. The Stoic practice of apatheia is the refusal to be disturbed by that which cannot be altered. Equanimity is a skill, not a personality trait. It is built through repetition, through training the mind to respond with reason rather than impulse. A mind that is not trained will grasp onto every disturbance, every inconvenience, every moment of discomfort. A trained mind sees these things for what they are: temporary, insignificant, fleeting. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that most things do not matter as much as they seem to in the moment. A harsh word from a stranger, a delayed plan, an unexpected challenge, none of these things carry real weight unless the mind decides they do. Most stress is not from events, but from interpretation. Change the interpretation, and stress dissolves. Before sleep, the practice of detachment must be intentional. It is not enough to wish for peace. The mind must be conditioned for it. This means systematically reviewing the events of the day and consciously releasing each one. If there was a moment of anger, it is left behind. If there was disappointment, it is not carried forward. If there was success, it is acknowledged, appreciated, and then set aside. Nothing lingers. The day is closed like a completed book. The present moment is the only thing that exists. The past is gone. The future has not yet arrived. The only responsibility is to rest the mind in preparation for what comes next. One of the most common traps of the restless mind is the belief that holding on to stress is useful. There is a fear that if thoughts are not constantly reviewed, something important will be forgotten. But this is an illusion. The brain does not need to be burdened to be effective. In fact, it works better when it is not overloaded. Stress does not make a person more prepared. It makes them less capable. Letting go is not carelessness. It is an intelligent choice to remove what is unnecessary so that focus and energy remain for what actually matters. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on how small individual concerns were in the grand scheme of time. He reminded himself that in a few years, even the greatest troubles would mean nothing. This was not to diminish the significance of effort or responsibility, but to remove the unnecessary weight of anxiety. When seen from a larger perspective, most problems shrink. The words of a critic, the frustrations of the day, the disappointments of unfulfilled expectations, all of these things are temporary. Letting them go is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is choosing to spend energy only on what is worthy of attention. Most people think that letting go is something that happens naturally, that over time stress fades on its own. But this is not true. Stress lingers because it is fed. It is given attention. It is replayed in the mind. Detachment is an active process. It requires a conscious decision to stop feeding the thoughts that disturb peace. It requires the discipline to recognize when the mind is clinging to something pointless and to release it immediately. The longer stress is entertained, the stronger it becomes. Letting go is not passive. It is a skill that must be practiced until it becomes second nature. Equanimity does not mean feeling nothing. It means not being controlled by feelings. It means understanding that emotions arise, but they do not need to dictate actions or disturb peace. Anger may surface, but it does not need to be followed. Sadness may appear, but it does not need to linger. The mind remains steady, unmoved by passing emotions, unaffected by fleeting impulses. The Stoics did not suppress emotions, they mastered them. They didn't allow themselves to be ruled by what was temporary. Before sleep, this mastery must be reaffirmed. It is the time to remind the mind that nothing from the day has the power to affect the present unless it is given permission. It is the time to reaffirm that nothing is worth losing peace over. No mistake, no disappointment, no external event holds enough weight to disturb inner stability. The night is a reset, a clearing of mental clutter, a preparation for what comes next. The practice of detachment also extends to the future. Many lie awake not because of what has happened, but because of what might happen. They anticipate challenges, fear outcomes, worry over possibilities. But the future is untouched. It exists only in speculation. To suffer over what has not happened is to suffer needlessly. The Stoics understood that the future cannot be controlled, only met with readiness when it arrives. Worry does nothing to change what is coming. Preparation is useful. Anxiety is wasted energy. Letting go of future concerns is as important as releasing the past. A person who masters detachment before bed does not wake up burdened. They do not start the day carrying the weight of yesterday. They wake up clear, light, unshaken. Their mind is not a battlefield of unresolved emotions. It is a tool sharpened for what lies ahead. They do not react impulsively to new stress because they have trained themselves to release it before it has a chance to take hold. Letting go is not a one-time decision. It is a daily practice. It is the art of knowing that nothing is truly permanent, that no stress is worth clinging to, that no fear deserves more attention than necessary. The person who learns to release what is outside of their control does not suffer under its weight. They remain free, they remain steady, they remain at peace. And peace, in the end, is not something given by the world. It is something created within. Detachment from the day's stress is not the end of the process. It is the preparation for something greater. The mind does not simply empty itself. It must be guided, trained, and conditioned towards strength. Letting go clears the unnecessary, but what remains must be sharpened. The Stoics did not simply remove negative emotions, they replaced them with discipline, resilience, and clarity. They understood that the mind is not a passive instrument. It is something that can be shaped deliberately. This is why they practiced visualization, not as a form of wishful thinking, but as a method of mental conditioning, a way to prepare the mind for challenges before they arrived. The human brain does not distinguish between what is real and what is imagined. It reacts to visualization as if it were experience itself. This is why fear grows in anticipation of difficulties, even before they occur. It is why anxiety tightens its grip when the mind fixates on worst-case scenarios. The body prepares for what the mind believes to be real, but this same mechanism can be used for something far more powerful: resilience training. The Stoics knew that hardship was inevitable. They did not wait for it to arrive unprepared. They rehearsed their responses in advance. They imagined moments of difficulty and trained themselves to remain composed, unaffected, and in control. This is how resilience is built, not in the moment of crisis, but in the quiet hours before it ever happens. The moments before sleep are the most powerful for this kind of training. The mind is in a receptive state, transitioning between wakefulness and rest, more open to suggestion, more malleable. Whatever is reinforced in these moments sinks deeper into the subconscious. A person who lies awake replaying fears and doubts strengthens those fears and doubts. But a person who deliberately rehearses strength, who envisions themselves facing difficulties with calm, who sees themselves overcoming obstacles with clarity and control, wires their mind to react that way when real challenges appear. This is why the Stoics practiced premeditatio malorum, the visualization of adversity. They did not do this to create fear. They did it to remove fear. By mentally preparing for discomfort, they ensured that nothing could truly disturb them. Most people approach challenges reactively. They wait until difficulties arise and then hope to respond well. But the Stoic prepares in advance. They do not rely on fleeting motivation or blind optimism. They train their mind systematically, knowing that what is practiced repeatedly becomes automatic. When a situation demands patience, they do not search for it. They have already rehearsed it. When an unexpected hardship appears, they do not panic. They've already experienced it in the mind and know how to respond. Their composure is not luck, it is the result of training. Visualization is not fantasy, it is a tool for shaping the mind's automatic reactions. A person who repeatedly visualizes themselves handling pressure without stress develops a nervous system that does not react impulsively to pressure. A person who mentally rehearses staying calm in conflict builds a natural ability to remain composed. This is not abstract theory. It is a well-documented function of the brain's neuroplasticity, the ability to rewire itself based on repeated patterns of thought and behavior. Athletes use it to refine their performance. Public speakers use it to reduce anxiety. The Stoics used it to fortify the mind against suffering. Marcus Aurelius wrote that a person should prepare themselves each morning for the difficulties of the day ahead. But preparation does not begin in the morning, it begins the night before. The mind absorbs what it is given before sleep and carries it forward into the next day. If negativity is left unresolved, it seeps into the subconscious, influencing the tone of the morning. But if resilience is deliberately trained, if calm is reinforced, if detachment from external events is visualized, then the mind wakes up aligned with those qualities. A day that begins with stress is often the result of a night spent reinforcing it. A day that begins with steadiness is built the night before. There is a difference between passive hope and active training. Hoping for strength in difficult times is not enough. The mind does not automatically default to resilience. It must be programmed for it. Just as the body strengthens through repeated physical exercise, the mind strengthens through repeated mental rehearsal. A person who runs through panic in their head every night will find themselves panicked in real life. A person who runs through composure in their mind will find themselves naturally composed when it matters most. Visualization must be structured correctly to be effective. It is not simply about picturing success or repeating empty affirmations. It must be done with realism and precision. The Stoics did not fantasize about easy outcomes. They rehearsed their reactions to the worst possibilities. They imagined being insulted, being betrayed, being met with failure, and they conditioned their response to remain undisturbed. They did not avoid the thought of difficulty. They faced it head-on and trained themselves to greet it with calm. This is the true power of Stoic visualization. It removes the element of surprise. It ensures that when difficulty arises, the mind is not caught off guard. One of the most effective methods is to visualize the next day in advance. Instead of letting the mind drift into random thoughts, it is directed with intention. It runs through the expected challenges, the moments of potential frustration, the interactions that may require patience. And then, in each situation, it is trained to respond as a Stoic would, with clarity, with control, with complete detachment from emotional impulses. This is not done to predict the future, but to remove the mind's tendency to react impulsively. When the next day arrives, there is no hesitation. The mind has already been there. It already knows what to do. Repetition is what makes visualization powerful. A single night of mental rehearsal will not reshape years of conditioning, but when done consistently, the effects are profound. Just as a musician practices their instrument, just as a fighter trains their reflexes, the Stoic trains their mind. They do not leave their resilience to chance. They forge it, they shape it, they build it until it becomes their natural state. Sleep is often seen as passive, but for the Stoic, it is an opportunity. The body rests, but the mind is still absorbing, still learning, still setting itself for the next day.